Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. So we're going to be starting off in a couple of minutes, in fact, not seconds, keeping in mind we've got a few learners still wanting to join. So let me give a couple of minutes. So any questions from yesterday's session? Anybody, any questions from yesterday's session? Harrison, any questions? Zikra, Cynthia, Vanwara, any questions that you're in?
No questions from my side.
No question from Harrison.
Thank you. So today we are going to be looking at starting learning outcome 4, 5, and they will be covered together. Keeping in mind, we need to look at research, putting together a piece of research, which is through a proposal. And then at a later stage in learning outcome 5, we'll be essentially looking at, presenting a mini research report. And then learning outcome 6 is a bit of reflection on what we've covered in this unit in terms of your personal development plan, and obviously looking at some of the bits that we will look at from a point of view of customer service and, own reflection on your own academic skills. So we've got a few websites that we will be looking at in order to, do this research, because we are not looking at primarily going into a full-scale research project here. So it will be a case of looking into, going through existing published research reports and then picking up one which is something which strikes a chord with you. And that would allow essentially most of you to pick something up to be able to, as a topic, essentially pick a research topic and then allow you to, go in and do some research, secondary research, desk-based research, and then put together a proposal from that report. And then later on, essentially, we are looking at you elaborating on that research proposal to make a mini research, project for this particular unit and also the assignment. So let me just quickly send this across to a couple of other people as well. So we'll start off in a second. Just having a quick look in terms of, how simple is it to join the meeting? Yeah, I've got Jefferson coming on now. That's great. Morning, Jefferson.
Good morning.
How easy or difficult is it to join, the sessions? Simple on screen.
Yeah, I registered before. I thought maybe because last time I found it difficult entry with so, but I didn't even try. It's when you send me, I just tried and I just get me login. So it's okay.
What we do now is we don't look at doing things wherein it requires you to authenticate, because some of you do not have Zoom logins. So it's just a case of doing the registration by putting in your first name, last name, and your email address, and then it sends you an email. So this allows us to get a bit of an attendance as well, to say that, okay, you've joined the session, and you also get an email when you fill those details up to click join the meeting.
Okay.
And sometimes, when obviously I think we will use this option more often. The reason I say this is because sometimes when we send you an invite, it has a meeting code and a passcode for you to put in and then join in. So that makes it a bit more cumbersome, I think, for a lot of learners.
Yeah.
What I want to also do is quickly, show you a thing that we have. I don't know how many of you have downloaded the My School app. Has anybody, who's online has downloaded the, the My School app? I'll show you. So what I want to do is store. While we have some of the other learners joining in, let me just quickly take this opportunity to also show you how to use the, let's say the, what is called, the My School app that we've started. Now, if you see my screen, what we've done is we've gone in and subscribed to an app which is called the, My School app. And this My School app essentially can be downloaded. So let me just share the full screen, because I will skip and go through a couple of windows. So let me share the full screen. For some of you, I think it might be a bit of a clutter, but my suggestion would be to, look at turning your phone or your tablet into a landscape mode, and that would allow you to pretty much see or show, see the full screen that I'm showing. So assuming if you use an Android or if you use iPhone, depending on which application that you use. So what I would suggest that you need to go in and do is type this particular app, which is called the My School app. So MYSCHOOL and APP app, and do a quick search. So I'm not able to find it. This is surprising. So My School, just type My School, and then there should be a My School app. One second. I'm going to go through the link that we have, which I think a lot of you should have received, this particular email from us in terms of how to set up this app. So this is the app. which is on the App Store. Now, we've sent you an email. If you're using an Android phone, you can click on this link and it'll open the Android version of the app. But this is the app, so we should be able to find it, obviously in the App Store. If you don't have that email from us, do let me know. And what I will do is primarily make sure that you are able to, go in and get these apps. So in terms of, so let me just quickly close this. And when you look at this particular app, this app is what you need to download on your phone. Now, this app is a free app. There is no charges or anything like that. But when you download this on your phone, there's a small video of it, which I've also created in terms of the process of how you would use this app. This app is basically going to help us communicate more effectively with you. So it's an app which primarily allows you to, get access to the system. Obviously, look at, in particular, communicating with us. We are able to send you text messages, invites for the Zoom meetings, and all this is, and including a timetable, all this is going to be available from within the application. So when you click on My School app, you download it, you open it up. Always make sure in this bit, which is important, which I'm sharing, is always make sure that you are allowing the scheduled summary. Allow. Make sure that you allow, because if you don't allow, then you would not get any notifications. If we send an assignment reminder, a Zoom meeting link, a timetable, or an update on the presentation, then you would not get the message coming onto your app. So always make sure while you're installing the app, you use allow. And when you allow, and this will mean that we can deliver notifications to you through the app. So when you download the app, search for the school, which is UK Versity. UK is always capital, Versity V is capital. Then the first thing that you will need to do is register on this app. So write down your first name, your last name, your email address. You'll need to confirm your email address. You would need to put in a contact number. Obviously, the app will not work if you don't put your mobile number in. And when you put your mobile number in and you put your password, then it will allow you to essentially, register with this application. So if you're doing it in your own country and obviously downloading it, maybe putting the area code like +92 +880 +44 might not be required because it will detect automatically. But in some cases, if it doesn't register, then my suggestion would be to look at obviously putting the area or your international code as well. When you put your details in, click enter. And when you click enter, it will basically ask you to accept the terms and conditions. Both of them have to be accepted. You press confirm, and then obviously it will send you an email on your email address that you put in to confirm that you have subscribed to this email. Now, once that email comes through, what will happen is you'll have to, once you've confirmed the email, what will happen is basically it will ask you to go in and sign on to the app. So that is in the second video because I wasn't getting that email through straight away. The work emails sometimes take time, but Gmail, Yahoo, Hotmail pretty much would be instant, but it takes about a minute or so for it to pop through. And once that comes through, what you need to then do is basically go in. And if you see this, I've received that email, which comes like this. And once that email comes through, you click on it to activate your account. Once the account is activated, that means you've subscribed to the UK Versity My School app. And when you've subscribed to this particular app, all you need to now then do is go in and essentially sign into the app. So I've done the activation. And what I would do is primarily go in and then sign into the app. So when you go and sign in or log into the app, you'll have to find the school again. So just type UK Versity, it'll automatically come up. In this case, now don't use register, use the option of signing in. And when you sign in, that would allow you to, get into the app. So what I'll do is in the meanwhile, for those of you who haven't got it, I'm going to send this email across right now. If you parallelly keep watching the video, and then this, when you signed in, you will have lots of different things that you will see in the app. there is news, obviously there is bits and pieces on timetable. We are still populating the app. And when we send you a text message or any sort of an update, that will also be available, from within the app. So this is going to be a useful tool for you to be able to stay connected with us. And our suggestion would be to primarily go in and, set up this app on your phone, and that would allow you to be closer in touch with us. And if you need any urgent things, or, it is a one-way communication essentially, but it will allow you essentially to, get all the useful bits of information from us from time to time. Now, this particular app, as I mentioned to you, is absolutely free. So we are paying for the subscription and other bits, but my suggestion would to go in and download this particular app. And when you have registered, with us for this particular application, then obviously we are able to see, who are all registered. And then what we can essentially do is send you a message, send you a link, depending on the course that you're doing. And that would allow us to, send the messaging across for timetable, for assignment alerts, or, things like Zoom invites. So currently what we do is we send you a meeting invite rather than set up a schedule in advance. We send you a meeting invite every time there's a session on Monday and Tuesday. But if you register for this app, what you will be essentially able to see is that you will receive notifications from us, and that would allow you to get all this through the calendar. So if I show you my calendar, so for example, if this is the calendar that we have, and if you see the calendar, just go in to see, the teaching sessions, you will be able to see all these in advance, which are already scheduled for you. So this is going to be useful for us to use it as a communication tool. And my suggestion would be that it is best that you go in and download this app, and this way you can remain connected, with us. Now, you can also download the Moodle app, and there is a Moodle video, which is again a free app. And this one can be used again to download. And there is a introduction video, which is there on the home page of our Moodle, which you can actually download. And it shows you here how to set up your Moodle tablet oblique, mobile. Again, there's a free app, and it'll ask you to know three things. One, your registration, with your username that we have emailed to you, the password that you've set, and obviously the URL where the Moodle is installed. And once that is done, you would be able to receive all the course material that you see, on the browser, that will be available to you on your small screen, with regards to getting the same access that you get from a desktop browser. So it'll ask you to key in the website URL, which is http://lms.ukversity.co.uk. Once it detects the installation, you are able to see UK Versity Moodle, type in or key in your username and password. And once that has been done, you'd get access to the course material that you have, from a point of view of what you've subscribed to, and that should be, visible to you. And that allows you to see the full course material, presentation, handouts, ebooks, the calendar that we have, which is basically going to show you sessions aligned, any updates or, tasks which are coming up. All those things would be available, from within the Moodle app. And again, we can send you notifications from here, from inside the Moodle, and that allows us to remain in touch with you with regards to, important deadlines and submissions that you need to do. So this would be an ideal way if you have these two apps installed on your side. One is the Moodle, and the second one is the My School app. And that should allow you to remain in touch and on the course with us at any given point in time. Now, having said that, let's quickly start across today's session without any further delay. I think what we need to be able to do is stick to the time. 11 o'clock means 11 o'clock. And I would expect that those who are joining on time, should not be made to wait, because time is precious, time is everything currently. So I think because the sessions also sometimes run into an hour and a half, what we want to do is make sure that everybody is able to join the sessions on time, and I normally end up sending the invites a couple of minutes or a couple of minutes essentially just before the session. And if you're subscribed to this particular app on Moodle as well as the My School, you should be able to see the invites or the connecting times primarily through the calendar itself. So typically we will start populating the calendar provided we have users subscribing into the app, because as of now what we do see is that a lot of users haven't subscribed. We have sent out emails, and as you can see, we've only got a few users here. This is something new that we've started just a few days back, and I'm pretty sure that all of you would have received this email. If you haven't, then obviously we can set out a reminder email to you in terms of how to set this app. And because you are going to be studying with us for the next couple of weeks and a few months, it is always going to be useful to have this app available so that you are able to get hold of things which are quite handy. Things like Zoom meeting invites, calendar, your term and timetable, the units that we are covering, and also some of the important information or news that we normally send out at any given point in time with regards to the course or submission of assignments and things like that. So I will probably now make a quick start because we've got a couple of learners still joining, but we'll admit them as they come in. And what we don't want to do is obviously look at making use of good time for the ones who have already joined. Now, let me press record for the benefit of learners who are going to be joining. So thank you so much for joining, and welcome to today's session. What we are looking at doing is continuing our journey on the unit which is the academic skills in health and social care, academic and research skills. So far we've covered learning outcome 1, learning outcome 2, and learning outcome 3. Just very briefly in terms of the learning outcomes, what we've covered is in the first learning outcome we've looked at doing a bit of a skills audit, a SWOT, and also development of a PDP, a personal development plan. And this has been done by doing 3 things. 1, we've taken a test and taken down a screenshot of that particular test from the British Council website, which shows us our English language proficiency level. We have then gone in and used one of the templates which we have provided to do a SWOT analysis. And after that, what we've also done is using that using the SWOT analysis, we've also done a skills audit, again, a template which has been shared, and that allows you to do a skills audit primarily on a couple of things like English academic writing skills, Harvard referencing skills, your IT skills, and that has allowed you to get hold of information about yourself in terms of your strengths, in terms of your weaknesses. And with that in mind, what we've gone ahead and then done is created what is called a personal development plan. Again, there's a bit of a template that we've used here for the PDP, and that template essentially allows us to, let's say, capture bits and pieces around, what are the areas that we need improvement on, what are the areas that we are good on, what are the areas which kind of present, let's say, threats to us, and areas or skills or knowledge that I need to improve on so that we are able to, let's say, improve those skills. And with the improvement of those skills, it allows us to, work maybe better and obviously adapt to situations in a better way. So just to quickly show and share this across with the full screen so that everybody is able to see. What you get to see now is essentially a version which primarily allows you to see the British Council test that we did. You have to keep a screenshot of it, so it helps us determine your English proficiency. Once you've done this test, I've asked you to do a SWOT analysis, and a SWOT analysis is primarily looking at your strengths and weaknesses in relation to the course that you're doing, in relation to your academic writing skills, your IT skills, and your English proficiency skills, and Harvard referencing skills. Once you've done this SWOT, I've asked you to fill in what is called a skills audit template. And in this, we've used a numbering system or a ranking system, ranking 1 to 3. And that allows us to understand whether I'm at a beginner's level, at an intermediate level, or at an advanced level. Anything that you rank as one, which is primarily important to you, but you have a beginner's skill on that side, then what we need to do is note that point down, and obviously that will be taken into what is called the personal development plan, because this is an activity that, or you are going to put together a set of activities that are going to help you improve your skills on that side. So we are looking at 4 in particular. This is the personal development plan template. There's a bit of reading notes in terms of how to fill this up. And when you read this, we have to use this template to look at putting in from us weaknesses. What are the areas of development? What priority have you assigned on a scale of 1 to 3? So you could look at a scale which is consistent with the skills audit template 1 to 3. What kind of activities you would undertake to improve that area or develop that area or that skill or knowledge? What supporting resources would be required, whether we are watching a video, reading a book, doing some research, getting help from, say, professionally, getting some help in terms of attending coaching or mentoring on things like that. What is the target date that you are looking at achieving that by doing those activities, completing those activities, and when are you going to review them to see whether you've achieved them or whether you're happy with the attainment that you've done? And that would be something that we'll fill up in this particular personal development plan template. Now, the second part was primarily looking at understanding research. How do we go about doing research? And the research was primarily looking at primary research, secondary research, tertiary research. What are the various techniques through which we carry out this research? And in some cases, in one case, we looked at a slideshow wherein we looked at various types of resources and then looked at classification of these resources to crystallize our understanding, to say that, okay, this is how we identify primary research. These are the methods through which, or techniques through which primary research can be done, things like questionnaire surveys, feedback interviews, focus group interviews, and secondary through published websites, data from reports, journals, articles, and tertiary could be anything which has been republished and repurposed to meet a certain specific criteria of information that you need to give out or tabulate. That would be termed as tertiary research. Then we looked at the option of the third learning outcome, wherein we looked at understanding what is note-taking, what is active listening, what is passive listening, why is it important in the health and social care sector, how do we look at being present in the conversation and participating in giving feedback. Is active listening. If you're passively listening and you're not paying attention and you're not participating by giving feedback, then it tends to be passive listening. We looked at a video trying to understand in terms of what are the differences, and then look at intensive and extensive ways through which we can look at understanding how you could skim for information or scan for information. And then we looked at the listen method model and the 3A's model to understand how it is important and how we can put this into practice. And finally, we also looked at the techniques through which we could paraphrase, and those paraphrasing or anything that we wanted to do primarily was to understand how do we gather different sources of information, and that different sources of information allows us to compile information into data into information. And when we look at data into information, and then some stage information can be summarized into what are called reports, which is used for decision making, sharing, and obviously for providing information across to patients or family or relatives. And we have contextualized this in the context of looking at how it is important for health and social care sector. Now, in today's learning outcome, we are going to be focused on understanding how do we put together a research plan. And when we look at how do we look at creating a research plan, and then we look at how do we draft a research proposal, and then the idea would be to try and, for merit tasks, try and get some feedback from your tutor, which is myself, in terms of understanding what kind of a research topic you've shortlisted, what is the proposal aim. Proposal will include things like aims, objective, however you go about collecting the data, what will be your research methodology or techniques, and then finally, what is it that you want to accomplish in terms of, achieving by studying that particular area or field, and what is the reason behind the research that you're doing, and what could be the conclusions that you will draw when you conduct that research. So this bit is to be covered in Learning Outcome 4. Now, in close relation to Learning Outcome 4, we also have Learning Outcome 5, and this would essentially be focused on putting together, after you've done your research proposal, you prepared a draft proposal, and after that, what you've done is you've gone about doing or carrying out the research. But once you've carried out the research, you've collected the data, you've got hold of information. At that stage, what you need to be able to then do is basically look at, presenting this piece of research from a proposal and compile it into a mini project report, research report. And obviously, this would involve you writing the report in 5 different chapters. We'll go into detail. We are looking at about 200 to 250 words, maybe about 2.5 pages as a summarized miniature research project report. For merit, we are going to be looking at doing some oral question answer session. When you present that research to me, I would be asking you some questions and you would be responding to those questions orally, and that would help achieve the the merit criteria. There's a distinction criteria as well, which says you need to present your academic piece of research that you've done, and this has to be presented in a formal fashion, in a structured document, and that would be the mini research report that you end up producing, which has headings like introduction, aims, objective, rationale of research. It'll have sources of data collection. It'll have a bit of literature review. You're going to put down a bit of research methodology, and then towards the end, you will present the findings of the research with tables and graphs and interpret that what you started off with as a proposal in terms of your aims and objectives, and what is it that you've uncovered with the research that you've carried out, and that will be summarized in conclusions, and that will help you achieve distinction. So this is going to be presenting your research work in a professional, structured manner, and that would allow essentially you to achieve a distinction grade. Now, these are bits that we are looking at in terms of coverage specifically for Learning Outcome 4 and Learning Outcome 5. Now, let's look at after this recap and a brief overview in terms of what are we going to do and how we are going to go about, carrying out this research and, related to the assessment criteria. So let me just switch you over to the presentation. So here, if I switch you over to the presentation, there we go. Now, when we look at the presentation on this side, what we are essentially looking at is, in today's session, focused on first Learning Outcome 4. And in Learning Outcome 4, there are 3 assessment criteria. So we are looking at creating a plan of research for a chosen topic is health and social care. And I'll give you a few websites from which you can get hold of these research topics in particular, and they would essentially be useful for you to download a report. And from the download of that report, you would then be able to essentially, choose a piece of choose a topic essentially which you feel is going to be something that is useful for you, and then go about, preparing it into a proposal, draft proposal, and then later on using that report to summarize important contents of it to produce what is called an academic report. Now, these websites, so what we need to do is, because we are doing this at level 3, and what we are looking at is we are learning the beginnings of how we are going to go about and do and look at doing this research. So what we need to do is first understand where you would get access to a good amount of reports in particular for carrying out your research. So when we talk about these research reports, there are plenty of them which have been published on some of the sites. And what I would suggest is, if I just switch you over to the browser, because I put the links of these sites here, but essentially would want to show you in terms of what these sites are and how would you choose or shortlist and download a particular report which you are going to be using for the purposes of carrying out your research. So let me just switch you over to the browser. So as you can see, this browser, what I want to then do is I've copied and pasted the two links which I've provided in the slide. And one of them is for the website, which is called Health Foundation. Now, this is a website which primarily is a semi-government website in the UK. And this site basically, I've put in a link which basically allows you to go into different and read different types of research reports. Now, they are alphabetically arranged from A to Z. And obviously, depending on your area of topic or your interest, you could go into by clicking on, one of the interesting topics that you feel you would want to carry out research on. So, for example, if I look at mental health, just as a topic, just as a mental health as a primary topic. Now, within mental health, you would see there are lots of different types of reports which have been, published. Now, one of the reports which I could pick out is, casual effects of alcohol and mental health problems on the employment outcomes. Now, this is a report which has been obviously researched and prepared by the UK Biobank, and they have published this report on Health Foundation. You could pick out any such report by reading the summary or synopsis of it to see if this is an area of interest or a topic of interest for you. Now, if I say a simple report like retention of mental health staff, and I click on this, it will give me a bit of a synopsis on what the report is and what does it cover. So this report or research was essentially carried out by University of Sheffield. The research actually looks at investigation into variation and determinants of mental health care, staff retention within an organization, and then it talks about the report and research which has been done in terms of what all does it encompass. For example, why it was carried out, what would be the determinants of staff retention. So a lot of companies struggle with retaining good people in the organization. So this is a report which primarily focuses on understanding how to retain people within the company and offer them, benefits which would, be useful for them as well as for the company, and this will help in retention of staff. And then, what effect does it have on the mental health if you're not looking at providing, let's say the conducive atmosphere or environment for people to be able to work within the organization. So this particular report, in some cases, what you will see is a bit of a summary, and that is where it tells and gives you the aims and objective of why the report or the research was essentially, not the report, why the research was essentially commissioned. Now, when you look at this particular research, what you would need to do is obviously look at downloading this report, a research report, because at the end of it, what you want to be able to do is, go about understanding how the research was carried out, who was the target audience, what were the reasons they were able to discover, or what were the problems which were discovered, and how did the author or the team essentially which has carried out this research went about providing recommendations or solutions in terms of getting some answers or getting to a bit of a resolve. Now, the reason I say this is that we need to look at reports, research reports from here or from this particular website is predominantly because there are lots of ways through which you can gather research, but it's a case in point that when you look at gathering data and going about doing the research, we are not looking at spending 3 months, 6 months on this. This is a part of a unit which is in which you need to be able to understand how to go about conducting research, set up objectives, and so the idea there is to do a desk-based research. That means secondary research, and there is where you need to look at a website which allows you to find good reports, good research reports which you can actually use to pick out a topic and then do this particular learning outcome. So this learning outcome is be able to draft. One of the things that you will see is that sometimes when you have learning outcome which will say know how to, that means they are knowledge based. You have to just know about it. It's theoretical. But when you see be able to, that means you have to go about doing it. And in those cases, this is going to be important, is because you would need to access the report. You would need to essentially, go about downloading a research report and then essentially looking at carrying out your research. Now, this is one website, which is Health Foundation. The second website that I've got is Health and Social Care Research Publications. Now, here there are lots and lots of different types of reports, research reports, which have been published, and extracts of those reports are essentially available. Now, some of them are between, they are about roughly 5 to 6 years old, but it would be okay because we are looking at doing desk-based research, and what we want to be able to understand is how do we go about this activity of carrying out research. So if I just pick out one, the first one, as you would see, it gives you a bit of an executive summary in terms of what are the attitudes to mental health in Scotland. Assuming if this is not an area of interest, I might pick out something else, because this website is the Nhs Scotland website. So obviously a lot of this research reports will essentially be, related to research which has been carried out, in for example, Scotland. Now, let's pick out one report, which is basically the impact of disability on lives of young children, analysis of growing up in Scotland data. Now, this is the summary of the report or the research which was carried out. And then if you want to read the version of the document, what you need to do is click on the right-hand side, wherein it says, this is the file, or this is the research which was carried out. And there is a published report which has been published, and this is where it will give you the detailing. Now, the first thing that I would do in this case is, once we have selected the topic, I'm going to go about and download this particular report, download this particular research report. Now, once I've downloaded this particular research report, what I then want to be able to do is use one of the templates that we are going to provide. And let me share my full screen. So this is one of the templates that I'm going to be uploading on Moodle. This particular template will be populated from this particular research report that you have just downloaded. Now, because research is quite extensive, what we want to be able to do is articulate and keep it fixed to a particular point which is related to the unit. What we want to do is gather data from this report, which can be summarized and filtered into various broad headings of this particular template. Now, the first thing that you look at is, it says it's a research proposal. And when you do your assignment at a later stage, this will be task 3. So I've labeled it accordingly, but this is going to be a research proposal that you're going to initially submit before you start doing your, or conducting your research. Now, the research proposal will have your name and the topic in short. What is the topic or the title of your research? And then you can detail it out in about 10 to 15 words in terms of why you've chosen this topic and, what are the reasons of carrying out this research. You're going to mention your aims and objectives. Now, I would suggest not having more than 2 objectives at any given point in time, because again, time is of the essence and you're not looking at doing an extensive research. So here, the idea is it's a desk-based research. You're looking at referring to, at best, certain reports, and those reports, with those reports that you're going through, my suggestion would be to only pick up and put in only 2 objectives of the research. Now, what is the purpose of research? So what I will do is I will go through, say, for example, this is the impact, of disability. So this bit is basically my title of the research. And my title of the research, I'll put it here. I'll put my name in here. And then I'm going to go into reading the report, because what I want to do is mention what are the aims and objectives of carrying out this particular research. So when I start reading into the report, what you're going to see is background, objectives and scope of research, and you're going to pick some of these bits of information which are going to be populated into this particular template on the right-hand side as a Word document. Now, the first thing that you have to do is you will have to do a bit of reading. You have to go through and read this report in detail. Now, that's one of the reasons why I've asked you that you need to select a topic and then download the report so that you have it locally with you on your system, on your PC, and that would allow you to then, populate a research proposal or create a research report, which is required in Learning Outcome 5. So I'll go into understanding the details, the demographics. Obviously, it is giving us an executive summary of why the research was carried out, what are the various areas in which this research was carried out, what are the contributing factors in terms of, looking at driving, say, for example, disability having an impact on the lives of young children. And they've created a lot of, they've looked at a lot of arguments, which are family structure, parental mental health, well-being, experience of services, attitude to support. So we are noting down some of the points, mentally going through the report just to understand how they've gone about covering this particular topic of, the impact of disability on the lives of young children and how does it affect their day-to-day operations is what this research report carried out actually publishes. As you go along, you'll get some background, which will give you the purpose of the research. You will read this, but you'll have to write some part of it in your own words because we are not looking at, this is a 95-page report, probably about 10 to 15,000 words. We are not writing 10 to 15,000 words. We are looking at summarizing this report into about 250 to 300 words maximum. I would say, given a variance, 300 to 600 words maximum, covering learning outcome 3 and 4. The objectives and scope of research is coming from here. So obviously, my suggestion would be, although this is a very detailed report, it has lots of different types of arguments, areas, parameters that it's looked at in terms of investigating. You might decide that you're only publishing an overview of this particular report in your research proposal. So again, shortlist 1 or 2 objectives which you are going to see that are relevant to you, you understand, and those are the ones that you need to put into this particular document. Now, once this is done, what I would do is I'll go through the report first select a topic, download the report from these 2 websites, depending on the topic I like, go through that report, and then come to this particular template wherein I'm going to be looking at, populating it so that I can then go about, preparing what is called a research proposal. Now, what is the specific focus of the research? You'll have to read the report in order to be able to answer some of these specific questions. What are the key points of interest? What is the broader significance, or have these issues been resolved when this research was undertaken, by Nhs Scotland? And then, do you think this particular research report, which has been carried out, and the finding which it presents, will it have relevant, can this be one put into practice? And second, will it have a relevant impact on the population if these ideas, suggestions, or recommendations which has been made by the author at the end of the research are useful for the reduction of, I would say, the impact of disability on the lives of young people. Now, important point here is you need to also look at what are the key areas through which the report is going to scan through for presenting or summarizing data information which is already available. So literature review is basically a review which essentially means that when you do a literature review, what you're looking at doing is you're looking at essentially picking out information which is already published, already present on a related topic, and you're collating that information to see how much of that is available and whether that is relevant to your research topic or not. So a literature review essentially is a piece of academic or academic writing, essentially, which has been gathered from the existing knowledge and information or literature which is present within the market. Now, if I say that, just as a broad example, if I say that it is expected to rain today, and you look outside the window and you say, okay, it's a bit cloudy, but it's certainly not raining. So in that case, what the statement tends to do is it basically is going to say that it is going to rain, but you are going to look at existing data in terms of, in Manchester, for example, in last year, same month, same time, same date, a month, a year before that, and a year before that, and you'll tabulate a lot of data just to see, did it actually rain, on how much did it rain on an average in the month of October. So this bit of reviewing the existing literature or material which is present in the domain, public domain, or other pieces of research which have happened, then you are trying to relate that to your chosen area or topic of research, would all be covered under what is called literature review. Essentially, a literature review is an overview of previously published work on a specific topic. So if I pick out this particular topic which talks about the impact of disability on the life of young children, I'm going to be looking at picking out data or research data which has been published, previously published on this specific topic. And what I'm going to do is build on to that by referring to it, and that would be called research review or literature review. Now, when we talk about research and you would go about doing research, what we also need to look at is understand what is the methodology of doing research, primary and secondary. That is going back to your learning outcome 2, in which we understood what are the various techniques through which research can be carried out as a primary research or a secondary research. What are the tools and techniques, things like gathering data from existing resources, looking at research being either qualitative or quantitative, being descriptive or analytical. Are you going to look at a research which is going to be based on gathering data from case studies? What is the methodology? How would you go about conducting this research? Or how would you go about designing the study in terms of collection of data, whether it's going to be looking at interviews, how are you going to publish it? Those bits that are basically, answering this question, which is how do we go about collecting data, analyzing it, and then presenting it, would essentially form what is called your research methodology. So here you'll have to mention things like whether you're doing a primary research or secondary research. Is it going to be number-based, quantitative, or is it going to be a qualitative research, which is going to be data-based? You're going to differentiate and obviously put this across in 30 to 50 words. Now, where are you going to get your information from? So your sources of information for literature review would be the report. And if I take you back to the report for a second, you would see that there is an extensive list of references which has been created. And this extensive bit of references which have been created, essentially would be providing details of where the data has been collated from. So if I scroll to the bottom of this report, or towards the fag end of this report, what you're going to see is there are lots of different references which have been put, from which the data has been actually compiled. If I just scroll through this. So in some cases, the references are also put in as a footer. So, there will be references which they have put in under each particular page, and they would be then compiled into what are called, Harvard referencing. Let me just have a quick look. Yeah, so if you see, there are notes which are given underneath some of the pages, which are showing, from where the data has been actually collected. And this would be the source of information. Now, one of the things, I'll be honest here, one of the things which I would look at when I pick out a report would be to also see, where and what type of references or sources of information is mentioned. So if you see on page 35, this is a source of information which is actually coming in from a book which is written by Goodman, and it talks about strengths and difficulties, questionnaire, research note, on child psychology and psychiatry. So you are getting, again, a book here, which is developmental screening test. So there are lots of, again, a book here, Codewell. So you have lots of different types of sources from this, in this report itself, from where the data is actually coming. So things like you'll have to list the name of books, articles, and journals. So for example, this is again coming from a book. And what I'm going to do is when I read this report, I will compile a few depending on, I'm not looking at you reproducing the 95-page report, to be honest. And that is where I've mentioned that what you need to do is rationalize on the aims and objectives of the report and keep it to only 2. So if I just take you up on the beginning of the report, and that is where it talks about a lot of objectives in this case, and what we need to do is rationalize it and then only cover a few. When I say few, 1 or 2 maximum. So as you can see, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 10 objectives in this report. Now, what I would suggest is you pick out only 2, which you think are the most relevant or of interest to you. And those are the 2 objectives that you are going to be looking at, putting from a context of this particular report. So for example, one of the things in terms of the topic is, how does disability affect lives of young children? So one of the things which I picked out is the objective that I want to look at is how does disability affect child-parent relationship? This is one of the topics. The other bit that I would also pick out would be, let's say, so here, what are the barriers to accessing childcare and preschool education? Now, for me, these are the 2 objectives that I'm going to look at in this report. And then when you fill the details up of research of this project, purpose of the project, background of the project, and the sources from which this information is coming, only pick out sources which are books, articles, journals, or websites which are mentioned here in this report, but only relating to these 2 objectives that you have chosen. So a thorough reading of the report that you download is a must, and that would allow you to populate this particular research proposal template that I'm showing you, and that is what is going to be important. So if I take you back to the report now, and this particular bit then would look at putting about 10, maybe 7 to 8 sources, and then what is the conclusion and result of this report. So what you need to do is go into towards the end of the report and look at finding out a section which basically talks about what have been the results of this particular report, which have come to some sort of a conclusion that yes, when we talk about living, essentially the impact of disability on the young lives of children. So that is what you will basically summarize in the result and conclusion. And obviously, when you read the research report, in the beginning of the report, you would generally see there are some ethical considerations which will also be taken into account. So these ethical considerations, I would suggest, need to be put in here. You might put in a few, but it is not necessary that you need to put all of them. And I would suggest that you could put down some ethical considerations, which are basically limitations or reasons that we are looking at in terms of carrying out the research. So ethical considerations tend to be, the guiding principles or, the areas through which you are going to be able to look at conducting research. For example, when you put information down, you're not going to be putting information down of the users, the people who have volunteered to contribute towards the report. So what you're going to do is anonymize that data, which is hide their name and their details, personal details, and then present the research. So this is one of the ethical considerations that you need to follow the principle to, making sure that the participants' identity is not disclosed. And these principles tend to be that sometimes, you would see that, okay, people do not consent to participating in the research. So they should have the ability to opt out. And they would mean that you are looking at these kind of things which are going to be covered as far as ethical considerations are concerned. Things like confidentiality of the participant, details of the participant to be not to be shared. If they want to exit or do not want to participate in this research study, they should have an option to opt out. And in some cases, when the report is published, you also inform some of these participants that the report has now been concluded and it's been published, and they are the bits that you would look at, covering as ethical considerations for this research. So you need to get participants' consent. You need to ensure that it is voluntary. It is not going to cause any harm to any of the participant, your research report. And then, you're not breaching any data guidelines in terms of GDPR, confidentiality, and you're keeping the anonymity of the user whose data you're going to use in the report. Now, this bit is what we need to be looking at covering in Learning Outcome 4. And when I say it is be able to, it is a practical learning outcome, it is because this is where you'll have to go about shortlisting the report from one of these sites, going through the report in detail, and then choosing a topic and then completing this research proposal template, which will allow you to achieve the tasks of Learning Outcome 4. So here, in some cases, when you have to gather information, primary research, if you do, you'll have to look at, making a questionnaire. But assuming if you're not looking at, I would not suggest you do primary research. And because we are looking at doing secondary or desk-based research, so you are going to be looking at techniques here, which are going to be primarily, secondary research methods. And they are going to be looking at collecting data or information, which is going to come from a variety of channels. And these could include research reports. It could be websites, external sources, government reports. It could be, information that you're gleaning in from the internet and, from articles and journals. And that is going to be used, to, complete this particular learning outcome. So the subsequent slides that I've detailed out here in the presentation basically go about talking how you would get that information coming from the report that you are, the topic that you've shortlisted, the report that you've downloaded, and then how you would go about drafting this research proposal by completing the 5, parts, which is looking at aims and objectives. So rationale of the research, introduction to research, aims and objectives, rationale of the research. Then you're looking at literature review, which is data sources from which you're going to look at existing, pick out existing material which is out there, and then also pencil down what are the other reports from which you are going to gather this material from, articles, journals, published reports, research methodology, talk about what are the conclusions after collecting data and analyzing this data, which has been done on that topic. And then towards the end, present your findings or the conclusion for the research, and then also mention ethical considerations. They would then help you complete, Learning Outcome 4. So any questions on today's session so far? Any questions, anybody?
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question I want to ask.
Go ahead.
Yeah, when doing research, sometimes you go to some pages where you have someone writing about a particular subject, and in the after finishing the whole research, then they make references to about 3, 4, 5, as case may be, right, for references. So, mean that is doing that research, do I have to put the person name as a reference, or the same list which the author put as reference?
No, I think in this case, what will happen is you'll end up using the same list of references which you are actually mentioning in the template, which is where are you going to get the information from, sources of information. And that same list is going to go into, your overall references for the assignment. Because in Learning Outcome 4, the list of sources that you're mentioning are going to be specific to the report which you are looking at, reading. And from that report, you're looking at picking out the sources of from which you are going to get the information. But if you look at the overall assignment, you're going to have these references that you picked out from the research report. But in addition to this, you'll also have the other references that you're going to compile and mention, which are going to be related to learning outcome 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. Does that answer your question?
I don't know. Let me put it this way. Take it for instance. You're giving out a lecture and you make names to references of people. And I gather that information, for example, in a website from a UK Versity. Then after the whole research, you put the name of the where you get the source. And for example, I try to find out the information myself, because there was one I tried to log in, but I found out that I have to pay to get access to that reference. So my question now is that, do I have to put the person, for example, studying on the UK Versity website, which do I have to put them as reference, or the same name with the UK Versity post a reference? Do I have to copy the same name, even if I didn't remove it from those references myself?
So it's a case wherein what I would do is, because we are looking at, as I mentioned earlier, so let me answer your question in 2 ways. First is, because we are looking at doing and studying this as a part of the unit in terms of understanding how research is done, and then creating or writing a mini research project which is required for learning outcome 4 and 5. What we want to be able to do is shortlist and do a bit of our own reading first to see which report and topic is going to be of useful, which topic is going to be useful. And within that topic, am I able to get all the information that I need? So it's a case of selection, of carefully selecting a published research report, which allows you to glean the required information in an easy manner. That's the first objective that I would look at if I'm in your shoes, and I would answer it this way. The second is, assuming I want to understand the techniques through which research is being done, and I want to build a thorough understanding of how this would be carried out if I was to do this on my own and using the primary or secondary research techniques, then you are basically looking at, let's say, broadening your area of study, because you want to learn in detail or in great depths how to carry out research as a process. Now, in those cases, my suggestion would be to basically look at reading a few reports, and then again going back to the choice of careful selection, that which particular report from the which all research reports that you've downloaded, and from that shortlisting one particular one which is able to give you information pretty much on all the areas that you want to present in your assignment. So things like sources, things like aims and objectives, because we essentially know that we are going to be presenting this research report, summarizing it in our own words, and writing it as a mini research project in Learning Outcome 5. Because I have that information, I would, to a certain extent, go about selecting a report in a way which helps me fulfill all these criteria, checks all the boxes. Do you get it? Is that understood, Jefferson?
It's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, because what I don't want to look at is, if I was looking at doing, say, for example, I would want to get into an area of researching which primarily has not been done before. Then in that case, what will happen is, or mean, is that I'm going to start from scratch. So here you're not looking at starting from scratch. Let's understand we are doing this at level 3. Our aim is to be able to develop understanding of how research reports are, how research as a process works. And then when you understand how research as a process works, what are the techniques, what are the methods, what we want to do is, in Learning Outcome 4 and 5, go about creating a research proposal and presenting that research proposal into some sort of a mini report in Learning Outcome 5. So with the objectives that I know, and I know what needs to be done from a point of view of a bit of a boundary, what I would do is carefully choose a report, and that's where I would go and browse through a number of topics. If you want to look at doing your own research on that report itself, obviously feel free to do it, because you would go to websites, you would maybe look at books, you look at other areas through which you can gather information and maybe read about it a bit more. Yes, then in those cases, you'll have to download all those things so that you have it for referencing. And when you start putting it together into a report or a concise report, you would then appropriately reference those sources that you have looked at for gathering that information. And it could be done this way as well. So there is no right or wrong approach in this case. It's a matter of looking at how much time you want to spend on this and how detailed you want the report to be created. But when you do this, you have to keep in mind that your research report will need to have these 5 broad heads. And that is where the selection of, again, going back to the point that I mentioned, the selection of the report has to be carefully done. So you'll have to have a written introduction of, say, 30 to 50 words. You will need to write the aims and objectives. You'll have to explain the rationale of research, or why this research was actually undertaken. When you look at the site that I've shown you, disability having effect on the lives of young children. Why was this research commissioned by Nhs Scotland? So there's a bit of a background given in that report on page 6 or 7. Then you would go about understanding what existing review of the literature they've done. That means existing information that they've compiled. Okay, was this research done earlier? Was it done 5 years back, 10 years back? What kind of variables or arguments was taken, and why this research was conducted? What were the conclusions drawn, and were the recommendations put into practice? So you're reviewing what is out there in the market as already published material on that particular topic. And then what you do is summarizing what is present. You then decide on what methodology you're going to use. So here I am suggesting secondary methodology method, because of the fact that we are not looking at spending 4 months, 5 months on this research, that you will go out, drop a questionnaire, meet a few participants, and then collect information, compile it into tables, and then present it. No. So we are looking at only secondary or desk-based research. Finally, what you'll have to do is present the conclusion, of the mini research project. What have you understood from that topic when you've gone through that report? And then towards the end, what you're going to also do is put down some ethical consideration. That tends to be like budgeting was a bit of a constraint that might be mentioned in the report, and that is why research or collection of data was not done extensively. Like sample participants were only 20 instead of 200. If we had more budgets, then the government would have allocated more budget, then we could have done this sampling with 2,000 participants or 20,000 people. That was one of the constraints. It could be that's because the research was carried out for people who are younger than the age of 18. So there were constraints in terms of data information sharing, and they could be ethical considerations that you had to take into account. And that is where there was a restriction or a limitation essentially to carrying out this research. So these bits, as long as they are addressed, you are going to be able to achieve learning outcome 4 and 5. And then when you've read one last bit, which you've asked me, which I've totally forgotten, but what you've asked me is how would you put together your references? So when we look at in literature review, we are not asking you to go about and, do the review of what is actually present. And if this is the only report, there would be hundreds of different reports which have been compiled, but not just in Nhs Scotland, but it could be Nhs England, Wales, elsewhere in the world. So what you're going to do is here mention sources of information, which means you're getting it from books, articles, journals, websites, existing government published reports, whatever it is. And in terms of references, you're going to be looking at what are the places you have actually gone in to refer to that report. So the report itself will then provide you the books which have been referred or the previous research reports which have been referred. And towards the end of the report, generally what you get to see is that there is a list, extensive list of bibliography, which is normally present. And that should be looked at. Again, we are not looking at copying that. If there are 200 references, you will not put 200 references in your assignment or in your report. You'll only be looking at putting it for 1 or 2 objectives that you have picked out from that report, because each of these reports that I've shown you, are maybe 90, 100 pages long. So you're not looking at summarizing 90, 100 pages of that report into your research assignment. You're going to be looking at maybe 1 or 2 objectives instead of 10 or 15, which have been used to do the report or conduct the research. So here, your objectives are going to be 1 or 2. And with that 1 or 2 objectives in mind, you'd be looking at appropriately picking up references which meet those objectives. And those are to be compiled as references in your overall list of assignment towards the end. Is that okay? So I hope this.
Yes, it's okay.
Okay. So I hope.
Finally, please, I still have another question I want to ask, please.
Yes, go on.
If you have time to entertain that. When doing research, in my understanding, maybe we have to paraphrase, summarize, or use our own ways into the way we understand it. But in literature review, do we have to put it the way the author put it, or do we still have to write it in our own ways?
So in the literature review, you're not doing a literature review. You're putting the source of information from where the review is going to come from. So when you talk about, literature review, you'll probably summarize by reading into the report and then some paraphrase and summarize in about 30 to 50 words. You're not looking at replicating the entire review which has been published in the report. Is that okay? You're going to be summarizing it.
Okay.
Words and writing just a summary in 30 to 50 words. And that is why we've asked you to provide sources of information. So if I go into the report again, just to share that template, and go into the website from which the report is coming. So this was the website, and I want to go into this particular report. Now, in this report, there is an extensive literature review which has been done, and then they have provided findings. So what I want to do is go into the objectives and scope of research, and from here, basically pick out the important bits which we are going to mention in our summary of literature review on the research proposal template. You're not going to be looking at copying everything or paraphrasing and reading it and writing it in 200, 300, 400 words. You need to understand that your research that you're going to correspond to for learning outcome 4 and 5, meeting the outcomes, is to look at reading and then paraphrasing, reading and then summarizing and writing it your own words, which is paraphrasing, to reflect on the process of research. Okay. So
yeah, it's okay. Thanks.
Good stuff. So let's look at questions. Anybody else, if you have any other questions with regards to today's discussion? So what we will do at some stage would be, I would suggest that you go through today's slides and look at focusing on just learning outcome 4 and the bits that we have discussed, because the learning outcome 4 focuses on be able to. This is a practical unit. You have to look at be able to essentially means that you have to go about, doing and compiling it. And that is to develop this, let's say, competence of how to carry out research. That is why it is be able to. It is not know how to research, which is theoretical. Be able to is essentially you're going to do it practically to develop this skill. And that is where the secondary research option of doing a detailed report, shortlisting a topic from it, 1 or 2 objectives, identifying how the review has been done, what methodology how this is then being summarized is something that you would need to do in terms of covering this particular learning outcome. So I hope this is quite clear and allows you to understand that this is how you would go about covering this particular part of the learning outcome. And this is where I'll end the session today, because we've covered learning outcome 4, and then my homework, or let's say a bit of work that I need to give you today, would be to look at going to, let me just put these 2 sites here, and then I'll, rather than shifting it through, what I'll do is basically show you everything on one screen. So 2 sites that we've looked at primarily for the purposes of looking at research reports. Those 2 sites is what we will look at. And what I would suggest that you do at some stage would be, if I now bring this across and then show you. So what I would suggest, if I show you this proposal template, which is going to be up on Moodle, and the homework that I would suggest that you guys need to do would be to look at populating this research proposal. So these are the 2 sites from which you'll go across and essentially get hold of a particular topic of research. And then the main bits that you have to do is read that, download that report, and fill appropriate areas in your own words by paraphrasing it. And in some cases, you'll have to copy the references and the bits you have to populate in this particular template. And this would help in crystallizing the understanding on learning outcome 4, which talks about be able to plan and draft a piece of research. Is that okay? So this is what I would suggest by next week when we meet up again on Monday. The idea would be to shortlist an area of interest in terms of topic, download that report, read that report in detail, and then using this particular template, which is going to be up on Moodle, you're going to populate the sections by completing it. And that would help me understand that you've understood this learning outcome in terms of how to plan and how to draft a research proposal, which is going to be elaborated into a report at a later stage. Is that okay? Is that clear to everyone? Any questions at this stage? Because what I would expect is that I've had 1 or 2 students who have actually sent me detailed work from yesterday, which was looking at the process of note-taking. So they've gone in, they've chosen an article, they've chosen a website, they've paraphrased it, and they've sent an email across to me, which is great, because as you're studying this unit, you're also completing some part of your tasks in the assignment. So again, in this particular unit, the second task would be to look at filling up the research proposal, and that would help you accomplish task 3 of the assignment brief. So with this, if there are no more questions, I'm going to end today's session, and I will catch up with you next week. My suggestion would be to download the My School app and the Moodle app so that you have it installed on your phone, and we are able to communicate, and obviously you're able to get hold of information, which is something that we send across from our side related to your course, and obviously, in terms of other announcements that we do from time to time. Any questions, anybody, before I end the session? Hi, Susan, you mentioned yes on the chat. So was there any question at your end? Okay, no worries. So that's absolutely okay. I will see you guys next week. The present copy of this presentation and yesterday's presentation would be up on Moodle, and you should be able to access it. And along with the research proposal template and the 2 links to the website, which will allow you to go in and obviously shortlist and download a report of your area of interest, and then we will meet next week to discuss. And if for those of you who are able to, obviously complete your proposals and using that template, my suggestion would be you can email that across to us for reviewing, and that would come across on the email address which I've sent you on WhatsApp on the chat window right now. Thanks very much for joining, and bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.